Viktor Frankl said, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's way." This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson. Stay tuned for the next hour as Sue explores the human psyche, what makes us tick, and how to live better, more fulfilled and more meaningful lives. Only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue Jackson on the Finding Human program, and my guest today is Dr. Martin Stern, MBE. He's in England,
Audio
he's in London, and it's so good to have you here. Can you hear me, Martin?
I can now. It froze for a moment, but it's okay now.
Okay. We have Dr. Les Glassman to thank for introducing us to each other. He had done an interview with Dr. Martin Stern in England, and told me to please listen in. And I was so absolutely moved by your story, Martin, that I felt I had to get you on to High FM. So welcome. Your story is one of perseverance, unbelievable courage, resilience, and it's what we need to hear in our world today. So, I welcome you. And I wanted to mention your MBE, because at the end of your name is an MBE, but you are a retired doctor, but you specialized in immunology, and you lived in Leicester, and you specialized in asthma and related causes. How did you get your MBE? And tell us what an MBE is.
It stands for Member of the Order of the British Empire. It's an honour that was bestowed by the royal family. In my case, it was Her Majesty the late Queen. I'm not keen on flummery, and didn't regard it as a very big thing. But on the day, there were 60 people getting various honours, and I was a third from last in the 60. And when I got to the point where the Queen was going to pin this thing to my chest, she was 92 years old at the time. She had been on her feet for an hour.
Wow.
She asks a question and you're supposed to answer. So I had a brief answer ready. And I was expecting a sort of routine vanilla, what do you do type of thing, and something very straightforward. And she, before each person, a flunky sort of whispers into her ear to sort of prompt her for the next encounter. And she said, "I believe you do Holocaust education." And I said, "Yes, I'm trying to get particularly young people to think more deeply about why the human race does this kind of thing to itself from time to time." And you should have seen her reaction. It was not vanilla at all.
Good heavens. Can we get back to that? Because it's a very important point.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue Jackson on the Finding Human program, and my guest today is Dr. Martin Stern, and he's talking about what the Queen said to him when he was awarded the MBE, which is the member of the British Empire. It's a particularly great achievement of his, and he was given that for his work in Holocaust education. So when he told the Queen why he had got it, he was about to tell us he thought she would give a vanilla answer, but instead, what did she say, Martin?
Well, remarkably, I can't remember the words. It wasn't long, but the thing that really struck me to the heart was the flash in her eye. You know, I was suddenly very aware that this was a woman who had had weekly meetings with British prime ministers since 1953, and they took her very seriously. She was a hard worker. She did the background work. She understood more about politics, I think, than many politicians. And it was absolutely obvious that this was something that she had thought about deeply, that really mattered to her as a core thing that she was interested in, that she cared about. I was not just seeing a 92-year-old lady who'd been on her feet for an hour.
How
this was
amazing.
a woman with, a real brain and wonderfully impressive. And I arrived a skeptic and I went away a monarchist.
Well, well done. I am a monarchist, I must admit. I love all the pageantry. Now, Martin, your story actually started from the age of 2. But it started before then. In 1938, you were born in the Netherlands. But your parents were German. And your dad was Jewish and your mom was not Jewish. And from then onwards, I mean, you were your whole family were really under observation from then onwards. And you had to escape from the Netherlands, from Germany, and you went to the Netherlands. Is that right?
Yes, my parents escaped from Germany because under Nazi law, for a Jew and a non-Jew to get married was something that got you paraded in public and horrifically humiliated and then thrown into a concentration camp. This would be lethal. So they fled to the nice neutral Netherlands, which had been neutral during the First World War and had not been invaded by the Nazis, and they were refused permission to marry in the Netherlands. My mum had to go and live in Belgium, and my parents married under Belgian law. The Dutch civil service applied German law, Nazi law, in the Netherlands before they were invaded.
Isn't that terrible?
But I was born in the Netherlands.
And that was what happened to you at the age of 2? Because your life really began to change. Your father had to go into hiding, and your mother was pregnant with her second child, and you were 2 years old. Is that right?
Yes, I mean, I remember having my 3rd birthday in a flat where we lived in Amsterdam, overlooking a beautiful park, the Vondelpark, and it became gradually impossible for my dad to earn his living as an architect. He started making wooden toys in the basement of our block of flats. And when, at age 3, my mum took me down to have a look at what my dad was doing to keep us fed and housed and so on. I mean, I was a 3-year-old, and here were these beautiful wooden toys with the paint and the varnish drying on a ledge. And of course, I wanted to play with them.
I'm sure.
And my mum and dad had to be quite fierce with me to stop me touching them. They had to be perfect to be sold.
Oh, wow. Fancy at that age having to look at the toys and not touch them. Can't imagine it. Now, your dad had to go into hiding. Why did he have to go into hiding?
Well, the Dutch had expected to be neutral. Of course, if you're a nice liberal neutral country applying your neighbor's law unjustly to refugees in your country, to avoid upsetting your neighbors, the Nazis, you don't need so many men under arms. You don't need so many tanks and fighter aircraft and so on to defend yourself. And you can lead a much nicer life. And the Dutch did. The Nazis, of course, understood this and thought they would capture the Netherlands in a couple of days. When it took longer, they flattened the center of Rotterdam with their bomber fleet. They'd had practice in the Spanish Civil War and in Poland and how. And so the Nazis walked in because the Dutch couldn't defend themselves. And very quickly, laws discriminating against Jews started to be passed. Now, the Nazi Empire already had over 2,000 laws discriminating against Jews at this time.
Sorry, we're going to get back to that shortly.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue Jackson, and I'm back with Dr. Martin Stern, and he's in London, and I'm in Johannesburg in the studio, and we are talking about his parents thinking they would be safe in the Netherlands, but unfortunately they weren't. And you know, Martin, my father was a squadron leader in the RAF, and he was stationed in Mauriesbrook, and he said they knew that if they ever crashed over Holland, they would be handed over immediately to the Nazis. So what you're saying is it really resonates with the truth of what happened, that they had given over and in came the Nazis. And what happened to your father?
Well, the Nazis already had these 2,000 plus anti-Jewish laws in Germany, Austria, what had been Czechoslovakia, and in Poland. All they really needed to do was to load a lorry with these documents in German, get them translated into Dutch. Holland is full of people who can do that easily. The job would have been done, but they didn't do it that way. They introduced their anti-Jewish laws one by one by one. They were not mindless idiots. They had minds all right. They had people with doctorates in law and professors and experienced civil servants and politicians working for them. They understood that if they introduced the anti-Jewish laws bit by bit by bit, people's reaction will be, well, this is terrible. From tomorrow, I've just heard I can't do X, Y, Z. But yesterday I couldn't do A, B, C. We survived. We got by somehow. It's just one more restriction. And by using these salami tactics, by using this creeping method, 3/4 of the Jews in the Netherlands ended up with just one freedom left: to step forward into a gas chamber in Poland. 3/4.
Good.
3/4.
3/4. And I think today, as we face anti-Semitism around the world again, what you're saying is horrific, but we can almost understand it. That's terrible that you think that we can, in a way, see how it could have happened bit by bit.
We're living in a terrible time, Sue. But as this was happening, my father could no longer earn his living as an architect. He started making wooden toys to sell, and then he disappeared. And no matter how much I asked my mum, she wouldn't tell me where he was. And then still at the age of 3, my mum stopped me from playing with kids in the street. Television didn't yet exist in the Netherlands. No computers, no iPads, no Xboxes, no smartphones. And I say to kids, what do you imagine we did? We played with each other in the street. Much better than computers, actually, I think.
Absolutely. But that
too
was
dangerous.
Stopped.
Too dangerous for
And
everybody
yet-
to know.
And you know, Martin, what I want to bring in here is that by birthright, you were actually not Jewish. But it shows you that whatever, if your father was Jewish or your mother was Jewish, not both parents being Jewish, you were still targeted, no matter what you might have been brought up as.
Well, of course, under the rules and laws of Judaism, because my mother was not Jewish, I was not a Jew according to Judaism. But of course, Rabbi Hitler knew better. He got his civil servants and experts to make his own rules, the Nuremberg laws. And under the Nuremberg laws, if you had Jewish grandparents, you were a Jew. 4 Jewish grandparents, 3 Jewish grandparents. Now, it might be that your parents had converted to Christianity. Many did. It might be they'd abandoned religion and become atheists. Many did. It might be that you yourself were a devout church-going Christian. It might be that you were a priest in the Christian church, or a monk or a nun. But Jewish grandparents, and you were a Jew. What if you had 2 Jewish grandparents? Well, bad enough as my story shows. What if you had 1 Jewish grandparent? There the Nazis had a problem. They did not want to lose the support of 3 non-Jewish German grandparents at the way their grandchild was being murdered. So people with 1 Jewish grandparent were discriminated against but not persecuted. There's a difference.
Absolutely.
So they were very calculating. And if you'd said to, the thing to get your head round is that this is actually racism. It didn't depend on what you did. It didn't depend on what you believed. It depended on your inheritance, who you got your genes from. And if you'd said to a Nazi, but that's racism, I think the Nazi would have said, of course I'm a proud racist. That's the most important thing. Race determines everything.
Well, aren't we seeing that happening again now? We are. So Martin, what you're actually saying is ringing, I think, a lot of fear into a lot of people's hearts, a lot of Jews' hearts. Now, I wanted to just go on a little bit. So your mother fell pregnant. And when she was due, she was in labor. Your father came out of hiding to take her to the hospital. What happened to you then? Where were you sent when your mom went into the hospital?
My father helped my mum get to the hospital, and he got me to an architect colleague of his and a friend and his wife to be looked after whilst...
Were they non-Jews?
They were not Jewish. They lived. They were a non-Jewish architect. My father and this guy had trained together in a training center in the Netherlands. But they were kindred spirits. They were very good friends. And then after the birth of my sister, my mother died because somebody in the hospital didn't wash their hands. She got a hospital infection called childbed fever, not rare then and not unknown now. But there were no antibiotics. And my mother died. So there was my newborn little sister, Erica, with no mother, dad hiding to save his own life. And this couple that had taken me in for a few days, as they thought, well, they were stuck with me.
And your sister?
And they looked after me.
And did your sister come back to them as well?
No. My sister was taken from the hospital, from the maternity ward, by another Dutch couple, which had been befriended by my grandparents. And they looked after her.
So those were righteous Gentiles who looked after both of you.
Yes, and the Nazis there had been a public event at which the Nazi leader in charge of the Netherlands said that people who protected Jews would be treated the same way as the Jews. And whilst people didn't know the whole story, they knew enough.
They did. They put their lives.
They put their lives
going to
on
end
the line.
in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Gosh. And Martin, I think that's something that we really need to look at very closely to see how people did step out of their own comfort zones, knowing that they were safe, into this unknown where their own families were under attack. Now, you became very close to that family that you were with, and tell me how you felt that you ended up betraying your adopted father almost.
Yes, I mean, of course, not intentionally.
No, of
I was
course
a 5-year-old. The couple were very careful what they told me about the Nazis. They hated Nazism and did what they could against it. But I was going outside the home, and I was going to a little school. And as a 4- and 5-year-old, I would sooner or later have blurted out something that they had said, and that would have been the end of them. So they were very careful to keep me pretty ignorant.
As their child?
Yes. And when I was arrested, I was led past an open door and saw the husband of this couple from behind as he was looking at a map on the far wall, and I called out to him. And that's a trick the Nazis used so that he would not be able to deny under interrogation that he and his wife had been looking after for 1.5 years the little son of a Jew.
Oh, how terrible. And you were 5 years old at the time.
They had an 8-month-old baby. They were both arrested. The baby was left alone in the flat.
Oh, my gosh. And what happened to the baby?
The neighbors heard it cry and broke the door down, thank goodness. But and the wife was released the next day.
And you
but
know
the
what
husband,
Yes, sorry, the husband was?
The husband was murdered in the German concentration camp, Neuengamme, 20 kilometers from the center of Hamburg.
You know, and for you as a little boy of 5, it started unwinding when you were at school, and even your teacher tried to protect you, but you didn't understand that because these men came in and asked if there was a Martin Stern, and the teacher said no, he's not here. And you put up your hand very innocently and said, but here I am. And I see that you said, I heard it on Les Glassman's a podcast of you, his interview, that you said that one thing that you'll always remember is the ashen face of your teacher as you left the room. Martin, will you please connect to us? We're going to just go end now and then reconnect.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue, and I'm back with Dr. Martin Stern. And our time is going very quickly, and I know I'm going to be getting messages saying they wanted to ask so many questions. So, Martin, I'm going to definitely have to have you back again, which I hope you'll agree to. Now, just tell me what happened to you after that, because the family, you were exposed. So where were you sent?
Well, my sister and I were sent from different places to a prison camp in the Netherlands, a high barbed wire fence, wooden watchtowers, black creosoted wooden huts, bare sandy soil, and outside the barbed wire fence, heathland as far as the eye could see.
And how old was your sister?
My sister was 1 year old.
Oh my gosh.
She became a very formidable lady in adult life, but even at age 1, she was such a danger to the Nazi Empire.
I'm sure.
Reaching from the Atlantic coast to the edge of Moscow at one stage, that she needed to be arrested and killed. She was put in one place in this prison camp, and I in another. The first thing I remember being told is, don't go close to that barbed wire fence. the soldiers in those watchtowers have guns. They will shoot you dead.
And what was that camp? What was the name of that camp?
The name was Westerbork. It's in the northeastern Netherlands, near the German border.
And how did you survive that? I mean, as a little boy of 5 and a little sister of 1, there's no ways you would have been able to survive that if somebody perhaps didn't step forward and help you a bit.
Well, Westerbork itself was not a killing center. People were sent from there mostly either to Auschwitz or Sobibor, in which I would have died within 2 hours of arrival, because at age 5 there would have been no chance at all of being picked to be a slave, worked to death, with an average life expectancy of 3 months. Starvation being a key part of the process.
Where was your father in all of this? What had happened to him in the interim?
Well, my father was hidden by a very religious Protestant family near Amsterdam airport. It's a tiny farm where this family, the farmer's name was Hannes Bogaert, hid at any one time up to 70 Jews. It was crazy. I mean, the locals knew. The farm was raided 3 times. The farmer was told, if you do it again, it'll be the end for you. And he said, if I want to do it again, I'll do it again.
Wow,
and
what
he did.
Courage. Good heavens.
And in the final raid, 2 Nazi officers came to arrest him and his son whilst they were eating their evening meal. And he said, sit down, we haven't finished. It was their custom to read from the Bible at the end of the meal.
Yes.
And he got down the Bible, read a passage which is said to have had particular reference to these 2
officers.
I won't say the word on a family channel. These 2 supposedly human beings sitting on chairs against the wall. And he read that passage from the Bible out and closed the Bible and said, now you can take me.
Oh, I can't believe it.
And he and his son both died in concentration camps.
Oh, good heavens.
That farmer hid my father.
And then what happened to your father?
Well, during one of the raids, my father ran into the fields with a pistol. He shot 2 of his pursuers. It seems he shot them dead. He was caught. People caught under such circumstances were routinely tortured as part of the interrogation. He was sent to Auschwitz. He didn't die there. He reappeared in Buchenwald in Germany itself. Auschwitz is in Poland. So he will have been on a death march or in an open coal truck in winter, which was also highly lethal.
And how old was he at the time?
He was in his mid-30s. And he's recorded as having died in Buchenwald concentration camp on the 25th of March, 1945.
So from a very young age, you were an orphan. So in order to survive, you and your sister, when you got to the first camp that you went to, who I know, somebody stepped forward to claim you and your sister. Who was that?
Well, it was a woman prisoner who I didn't know. She didn't know us. Somehow the information about what my father had done had got through to this prison town north of Prague in what's now the Czech Republic. How he got the information, I have no idea. But she wanted to look after some children. And this man said to her, there's a train coming tomorrow from the Netherlands. She was from Amsterdam, whose father killed 2 German soldiers. Why don't you take them? And she collected me from one building and my sister from another building. and looked after us in whichever women's dormitory she was in. It changed all the time. She stole food for us.
Gosh.
That could have got her killed.
Absolutely. And we're going to get back to her and her name shortly.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
This is Sue, and I'm back with Dr. Martin Stern. And we've been listening to Martin telling us about his experiences as a very young boy, really unbelievably painful childhood. And, I can't help thinking that everyone listening in is thinking about their own children at that age and how did they survive. So you had this Mrs. Katerina de Jong who looked after you, and you were saying that she even stole food to feed the two of you. But there was a great sacrifice that she was prepared to do for you. Well, won't you tell us a bit about that?
Well, we were sent to a prison town in north of Prague, which the Nazis used for a big deception operation to pretend that Jews were being resettled and not mass murdered. And this meant it took longer to get killed. Once the Jews had served their purpose, off they went, about 1,000 at a time, in cattle trucks and goods trucks, to their deaths. And eventually it was announced that children had to board the next train. And although the prisoners didn't know exactly what happened at the end of the rail journey, Mrs. de Jong believed correctly that we would be going to our deaths. And she decided she could not bear to put us on that train unaccompanied to go to our deaths. She decided to come with us.
Good heavens.
She was not a child. She did not have to get on that train.
And she wasn't Jewish either.
She wasn't Jewish. She had married a Jewish market trader in Amsterdam, and that's why she was imprisoned there. And she was from a Catholic family. Also, with new prisoners coming in, there was some news about the outside world, so she will have had an idea that the Nazis were losing the war. She could have simply stayed. Her chances of survival were improving. But she decided to come with us. And I can remember walking with her, with my by now 2-year-old little sister Erica in her arms, to the assembly place, which was a children's dormitory now crowded with children. Names were read from a clipboard, children followed, and the dormitory gradually emptied until the three of us were left. Mrs. de Jong, my little sister Erica, and myself. And she was in a state. If she had somehow failed to hear our names, she was for it. She would, the Nazis had one answer for everything, death.
Death.
And if she so much as dared to open the door a little to find out what was happening, without an order, she was also in danger of losing her life. Well, we stayed for hours. It became obvious it was getting dark, and eventually, in great fear, she cautiously opened the door and disappeared for a while and came back. The train had left.
Good heavens.
That train went to Auschwitz. Those children were gassed.
Oh my gosh. What a miraculous thing that she did, to save the two of you. Good heavens.
Yes, and why our names were not called, I don't know, but my guess is that the list on the clipboard had been the list of children in the children's building. Our situation was completely irregular, and the efficient Nazi machine slipped a cog.
Good
and missed us.
And Martin, so what actually happened when your father died in Buchenwald? And I know that there's a long. I would like you to come back to discuss once you got out of Germany and the Netherlands, what, your life then, because your resilience is something that really needs to be heard at the moment. The way what you have done with your own life, and when you decided to come out of the deafening silence in your own mind of not ever speaking about your experiences, that's what I would like you to speak about. You went from home to home family to family once you actually left. We're going to get back to that shortly.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue Jackson, and I'm back with Dr. Martin Stern. And Martin was telling us about how he and his little sister, who was 2 at the time, were with Mrs. de Jong, and how she managed to save them from going to their deaths in the gas chambers. Martin, I know that you were eventually liberated, but before you got typhus, is that right? When you was in the camp?
No, there was a very, very serious, big outbreak of typhus in the prison town. But I didn't catch it. The Nazis were moving prisoners from other prison camps like Auschwitz to this prison town called Theresienstadt. And I could see them from a distance in their striped Auschwitz uniforms. We wore ordinary clothes, probably the ones we were arrested in, filthy and falling to pieces and stinking, but not the Auschwitz uniforms. And I was told to keep well away from these Auschwitz prisoners who were lining up to be showered, and who I could see from a distance. So I escaped actually catching typhus.
Mm-hmm. And then how were you liberated? Who liberated you?
Well, one morning, Mrs. de Jong told me that we'd been liberated, that she called it the Russian army, it was the Soviet army, not only Russians, of course, had come in the previous evening. And she had been out, I think, celebrating with the Soviet soldiers. She probably hugged and kissed a few, and I wouldn't blame her. Yeah. There was no actual fighting involved in the liberation. The Nazis had capitulated, and the Allied army simply walked into the remaining bit of Nazi territory. By the time I was allowed out of the dormitory, in the morning, the Soviets had gone. I mean, you don't keep an army in a place where there's a typhus outbreak.
Absolutely.
It could finish the army in double quick time.
Did you even know what liberation was about at that age?
Well, yes, to not in full detail, but to a considerable extent. And I was very annoyed with Mrs. de Jong for not getting me up and joining in the celebration. I never saw a Soviet soldier, I'm sorry to say, but I mean, I loved her deeply by this time.
And she clearly loved you and your sister. I mean, if she was prepared to give her life for you, what absolute love she had. Martin, I'm being told to wrap up. Will you come back with me next week? Perhaps if you can, I'll be in touch with you after the program.
Yes.
Because I'd like to start our talk from there, from when you left Mrs. de Jong and what happened after that. Thank you so much for being with me on the program. I've really been with you. And, you quoted a Solzhenitsyn quote, "If only it were all so simple, if only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being." and who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart. Thank you, Martin, and thank you, Craig, for keeping me on air.